started thinking about this project, there was a few things that I had in mind. Like the first part was that I wanted to make a space that was functional, that people could really use. Because of the kind of theme of the biennial is so much to do with thinking about working conditions and the conditions of production in the art world, I was thinking about working conditions today more generally. And so I knew that I wanted to create a kind of working environment.
There's nothing better about it works than the access point. My painting matures slowly.
No, I don't like routine. All of a sudden I get the feeling that I want to do something different.
And the Google office, in a sense, is kind of a new paradigm of what offices look like or become, so what offices are kind of becoming in certain industries. It's the kind of working environment that on the surface looks very fun, but kind of under the surface it is always a place of work. So even if the hierarchies aren't visible, there's always going to be a power structure. It's a system which is about kind of producing profit, it's a commercial sort of environment. People begin to totally identify themselves with their jobs in this kind of industry. But then any kind of new ideas that are produced in this working environment become the property of Google. So this is kind of what I'm interested in, because maybe there's parallels with the art world in a sense. Like kind of artists are sort of, similar to kind of Google employees. There's a belief that we're engaged in some kind of utopian activity. And there's also a total identification of, yourself with your job. So artists tend to see themselves as, 100% artists, whether you're sleeping or, kind of playing or working, it's like you're always an artist. Kind of there's no time off. In a sense. And so I was interested in kind of building this environment to sort of look at some of these parallels. So within the environment itself, people can come in and use the space. Like the public can come and sort of, we have wireless internet, people can come use their laptop, sort of work. Basically any benefits that come out of using the space become the property of Taipei Biennial. In a sense, it's kind of a satire of one of these kind of contracts you might sign if you worked for a company like Google. And then there's a sort of idea that the audience become the performers. Because I was thinking a lot about the model of, like the internet. The internet is sort of this space where most of the content is generated by users. So sort of the companies like Google, they just provide the framework and the structure, and then the users kind of create the content. But sort of, and so in a sense, this space functions like that. It's like the sort of, whatever this work might be is kind of up to the audience. But when they're actually in this space, they become a performer in this space. So in a sense, they're working for me, even though they don't realize they're kind of working for me or for the biennial. Like I extended an invitation to all of the artists in the biennial to provide artworks for the Google office. We have like video works which are on the computer monitors, and then sort of different works on the walls, and and some is kind of very subtle. Like for example, there's some photographs on some of the desks which look like maybe like the photographs that you might have on your desk, but they're actually kind of provided by Kerry Young. So it's sort of images that she thought might be interesting for the space. So I had a lot of people asking me kind of like, oh, do you work for Google? Or did Google sponsor this? And I was quite interested in that question, because I think in a sense, like, because this museum has been doing quite commercial shows, like the Pixar show, for example. So maybe it's not unimaginable that the museum might end up doing an exhibition, sponsored by Google. Somehow there's this sort of recategorization of the visual arts as part of the creative industries. And now the visual arts, on an economic level, is being viewed, both by sort of private companies and by governments, sort of government culture departments, as part of the creative industries. And so somehow there's this kind of flattening where visual art becomes the same activity as what Google do. In that, there's a kind of, I'm also kind of satirizing some of what's going on in the museum at the moment. There's a kind of mini critique of the museum itself.